Hey there, I'm Chris Barron, and in this clip we're gonna review one of my students' designs. His name is Kudo, and he sent this PSD through the Discord chat. Let's jump in and see what's what. So overall, this design is pretty clean. This was designed for 99designs.com, so this means this is for a client. Now let's have a quick look. I can see there are no guides whatsoever, so that's pretty worrying. Let's check out the active area. Let's drag out the guide. Okay, and now this other one. So let's see the active area through the marquee tool. That's 1411 pixels. That's pretty strange. In general, the active area should be around 1200 pixels. Some prefer 1100 pixels, others prefer 1200, but these are the two main choices. The fact that this student chose something at random is pretty worrying. It seems the canvas size is pretty spot on, 1920, so that's okay. But this is again quite worrying. Now let's have a quick look and see what's what. First of all, I can see there are no imaginary vertical lines that are well established. I can see, so here's the logo, and right from the get-go, this really bothers me. Even if we take away the guides, we can see these don't align. Not on the left side, not on the right side, so this isn't a good look. So the initial impression isn't that great. Overall, I would say this is about a 4-star design, so a strong 8 out of 10, because it is pretty clean, and I can see that this student has learned a lot from my courses, but it takes that extra 20% to make it really fantastic. You know, that little extra that'll give it an edge in a design contest. So what I would do is I would definitely make sure these are properly aligned. It seems nothing is locked. Let's lock it and put it like so. So this is the first thing I would do, but obviously I would actually align it to 1200 pixels. The next thing I would do, besides aligning these ones on the right side, is making sure this contact us button is a bit, 68 pixels. It's a bit tall for such a small header. I would go for about 60, maybe less. 60 seems pretty good. And I would obviously center it, and I might make this bold or semi-bold or something like that. I don't have the font installed, so we'll leave it as is, but I would definitely shrink this button. Now, the biggest problem as far as I'm concerned, apart from the active area that isn't well established, is this part right here, the hero area. Now, the hero area should not have this rectangle as an overlay. What you actually have to do in terms of Photoshop technique is activate the color overlay. And from here, you can actually you can get the same effect, but overall, this is much better, because when you want to quickly select something, you're going to use your control click, you're going to go through the layers, and if you want to select the photo, this is by far the best way to go. So use a color overlay. Mind you, the color overlay has to be set on the base, on the rectangle, and not on the photo itself. And here's why. Let's say we want to add an inner shadow just so we can separate the main menu from the actual hero area, right? So we're going to go with something like this, for example, something absolutely huge. That doesn't look nice, but that's just to illustrate my point. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy that layer style, I'm going to clear it, and then I'm going to paste it on the photo itself. So as you can see, we have the color overlay, and even though the inner shadow is applied, we don't actually see it. And why is that? Because this is a clipping mask. If we use Ctrl-T, we can see the photo is actually much larger. And if we take it down, if we bring it down, you can now see the inner shadow. So this is why you don't apply these layer styles on the photo, but on the actual rectangle, on the base rectangle. Okay, I'm gonna disable that because again, that was just for demonstrative purposes. I like the font. I think it's really suited for this type of photo and for this type of design. This seems fairly professional. It's Arial, but again, it looks lovely. It seems in tone with the overall vibe. It's professional. It's nothing all that fancy, but overall, it does a pretty good job. I appreciate the sub headline. You can see that this is actually an off-white color. I think that's pretty smart. So this would be pure white, and this is the actual eggshell gray. I think this is a good choice. That's fine. What I don't appreciate is the difference in typefaces. So this is Arial and this is Leto. Now the difference between two sans serif fonts has to be significant if you plan on using two of them. In general, what you want to do is you want to use one single typeface, for example Leto, and then you want to use different weights: bold, light, regular, italic, and so on. That's the best way to go about it. When you mix something that's similar, in this case Arial and Leto, the overall look isn't as good. Another thing I would like to point out is the fact that although these buttons from a design standpoint, they're pretty good, overall the messaging isn't fantastic. So get an estimate and book a handyman. Booking obviously implies an estimate. So I'm not really sure in terms of a business proposition what this does to the end client, right? To the actual user. I think this is a bit confusing, and even though you may say that's outside your scope as a designer, overall I feel a lot of business owners, a lot of clients on 99 Designs really appreciate when you adjust these text layers so it better fits their business model. So again, in terms of design, these are pretty well executed. I might use a stroke that's, yeah, maybe about 4 pixels. 5 is a bit much. But again, I think the essence here is changing the text to something else. Another thing that's clearly a mistake though is the height of this rectangle. I don't think you actually need 957. So that's a huge size, 1000 pixels for the hero area. That really doesn't say much. You know, again, the headline is nice, home improvement and repair simplified. I appreciate that. The subheadline looks pretty good as well. The two calls to action, they're pretty well executed actually. But again, all this space, nearly 1000 pixels for what? So what I would do is I would actually decrease it to about 700 pixels or so, and it's still pretty okay, right? And it still gets the job done. Obviously, you would have to recenter everything, but that's quickly done. So just like that. And again, are we losing anything significant in terms of overall style, overall impact? I don't think so. So overall, this is a clear choice in my book. If you want to do something, you may actually reposition this guy so you can see more of his clipboard, but that's optional. In general, you know, this image is pretty generic. It's not going to win any awards. So whether you place it like that or whatever, it's not a big deal. What I would do right here is I would bring everything up. And again, you know, the headline is pretty good. I appreciate the font, but now, you know, we're heading into a dangerous area. We have Arial, we have Leto, and now we have Roboto Slab. Now this is a serif typeface, and that's pretty okay. It's nice to mix sans serif with serif, but overall three typefaces is way too much. You should stick with 2 typefaces that are really different. Leto and Roboto Slab, that's okay. But when you add Arial into the mix, I don't think that's a good choice. There's also this problem right here where this line should be placed on this bit of text should be placed like so, and obviously centered. I don't have the font installed for whatever reason, but we'll leave it at that. So something like this. Now, here's another clear-cut mistake that's really popular amongst beginners. Overall, blue is the main color, right? We can see a different shade in the header. Overall, this is a good nuance. I love it. I think it's fine. Blue here, it implies an action. Blue here, it implies an action. But what about this section? So these aren't links, actually. These are probably services or unique selling points or whatever. This is a presentation, right? The user doesn't actually have to click on anything. He isn't supposed to click on these icons, which by the way, they're lovely. I appreciate them. They have a good amount of detail. They're lovely. But you're not actually supposed to click on them. So when you use blue, the action color on these icons, that's not a good choice. So what you should actually do is change it up to anything else. Again, this is a mistake a lot of beginners make because they just want to stay with that specific color, you know, blue through and through. But that's actually a mistake. So what you have to do is choose something vastly different, like whatever, purple or whatever, red, whatever you want to do. but make it different. Because what you want to do is you want to make sure the end user realizes that when he sees blue, he has to click it, right? Contact us, blue. Book a handyman, blue. How can you help you, blue. So this is a really big thing regarding associating an action with a color. Now, this is a big space that doesn't have a call to action, because again, think about this website in terms of a business owner. The business owner creates this website because he wants to sell. Now, if you have such a large amount of space without a clear call to action, nearly 2000 pixels without a clear call to action, this is not going to convert well. This button right here, these two are not going to get the job done. So what you have to do is you got to sprinkle in these calls to action through and through. So what I would do is I would create another button, something like 220 by, let's say 60. And I would center it with the marquee tool. I would zoom in real close, get the marquee tool and create a selection like so. 1 pixel in the white part, 1 pixel in the gray part. And then with the move tool, I would align vertical centers. And then Control A, align horizontal centers. And obviously this would have to be blue. And it would have to say something like get started or whatever, you know, something like that. By the way, another thing that I appreciate in this design is the fact that this button right here is pretty subdued. You know, maybe you could decrease it to about 20 pixels, but what a lot of beginners do is they do this, you know, something like that, huge, you know, just make it pop. You don't actually want it to be that huge. What you want to do is get something like this, and how I like to arrange it is like so. I delete the low-hanging Y. I use both alignment tools, and then I do this, right? And this makes much more sense. And let's do the same here. Sorry, 20 pixels. Okay. And there you go. So a smaller bit of text in a large surface area makes it look more elegant. So this is the type of thing you wanna go for. You don't wanna get something like 30 pixels, 36 pixels or anything crazy. Another thing that you really have to do is you gotta select all these layers and use this arrow right here so you can collapse it. And then what I like to do is I like to hold the control key and click on this folder, and it collapses absolutely everything. Now let's see what else. So again, this is pretty good. This again has to be centered. That's all fine. Let's talk about this testimonial section. This is lovely. First, the initial impression is that it looks good, right? I appreciate it. I think this line right here is a bit too visible. I think you should tone it down to about something. Oh, actually it has its fill reduced. So that's again not a good technique. So this student has to learn a bit more about the proper techniques in Photoshop. What you want to do is actually keep it at 100%. And you want to use the color picker for that, because when the developer is actually going to code your design, he's actually going to look at this color code. If you play with the fill or the opacity, that's not as good. So I would go for something fairly light like so. Okay, let's see the before and after. So it's not a big change, but you know, it's small incremental changes. And again, you can see that this isn't actually properly aligned. You can see that this actually is a bit skewed to the right. Another thing that I don't appreciate is the fact that this is far too washed out. I don't think this is the right way to go. 9D, 9D, 9D. No, you actually need something like this, because you already have a gray background, and when you use something as washed out as this, it just gets lost, you know, and you never want the actual testimonial, the bit of content that has to be read, to be lost in this background. So again, use something darker, use something like this. And again, the same thing for the name, which, wow, Poppins bold, yet another typeface. So from what I'm seeing, I strongly believe this student made the following mistake. He took various elements from different projects, right? So in one project, he used Arial. In another one, he used Poppins. In another one, Roboto Slab and whatnot. So this is a classic mistake when a beginner designer takes various sections from different designs and he puts them all together without going through all the motions. It's fine to reuse your work, but you really gotta make the proper adjustments. Another thing, all these little bubbles, although they're great in terms of design, they don't fit this narrative. They don't fit this professional look, right? So this is something that has to be fairly sober and serious. And these small little circles, they're from a different design. It's a different atmosphere, a different vibe. Taken just this section by itself, this is lovely, right? This looks pretty good. But when you combine it with the top art that's fairly professional, with these selling points or services, which are again pretty serious, it's not a good look. It's not a good look. Okay, the contact us section is again pretty okay. Well, the form is bang on. I really appreciate it. I think it's pretty well executed. I don't like the fact that these fields aren't adjusted. As you can see, 36 on the left, 78 pixels on the right. So that's a clear mistake. And I really don't appreciate this headline, this whatever title that's blue, because we have a blue background, we have a blue custom graphic, a blue button, and yet another element that's blue. I think this is overkill. Although it looks pretty okay, I don't think it does anything for the design. I think it impedes it. It doesn't actually help it. Finally, for the footer, again, nothing is actually aligned. Take a look. So here's the map. Here's the contact us, the bottom menu. Nothing is actually aligned. Yeah, so it doesn't really make any sense. This isn't aligned. This isn't aligned. This isn't aligned. No, there's this part. So that's quite a shame. That's actually quite disappointing. Plus the fact that you left 2015 here is again not a good sign. I think you should really make sure that things are updated accordingly. And again, this address, this is the bare minimum. You could have formatted it in a different way. You could have said something like contact us or our address, our phone number, or offices or whatever. But what you did here is the absolute minimum, and it's quite disappointing. Overall, this is again a solid 4-star design that could be easily improved in about 30-45 minutes. And it's a shame that the designer didn't take the time to actually go through all the motions and button everything up. The margins, the fonts, aligning everything correctly, just small little things that constantly add up. So overall, this is my review. I hope you enjoyed this. Sorry for my English. It's been a long day. Hopefully you guys could understand me. And I'll see you soon. Let's jump on Discord and see what's what. Thank you.